Good morning, Year 11. I hope you've already opened up the student worksheet assigned for this lesson. Please can you pause this lesson video, complete the retrieval quiz if you haven't already. This shouldn't take you any longer than 7 minutes. So your questions are in this column, and then you've got multiple choice answers for each question. Highlight the box, highlight the word by changing the colour. I don't mind how you indicate to me your answer. You could delete the other ones and leave the correct answer. Once you've completed the retrieval quiz, please come back to the lesson video to green pen your answers. Okay, so let's look at the answers. So the functional group for alkene should have been the C-C double bond. Monomers joined together to make polymers. The monomer used to make polyethene must have been ethene. The polymer that forms chloroethene, where you just put poly in front, polychloroethene. The everyday name for polytetrafluoroethene is PTFE. Alkenes can join together because the double bond breaks open. The N means any number of monomers. We use fractional distillation to separate crude oil. Alkanes are saturated because they only have single bonds, no doubles. And the test for an alkene is orange bromine water. When added to an alkene, will go orange to colourless. Give yourself a score out of 10 once you've green penned your answers for the retrieval quiz. Okay, so the lesson today is ions. You need to revise and review ions. So this isn't a completely new topic. You have covered ions previously. Now, the reason we're revising and reviewing it is because we're starting a new topic today. If we don't understand what ions are, you're not going to understand why you're doing the other lessons. So the learning intention, there are 3 because, again, this topic is just a revision topic. We're just reviewing things that we've already learnt. You need to be able to identify ions. You need to be able to describe how they are formed, and you need to be able to work out what ions are formed from particular atoms. So keywords: an ion is a charged particle. An electron is a subatomic particle with a negative charge. Subatomic means part of the atom. So remember, the electron is that really small, negatively charged particle within the atom. A cation is a positive ion, and an anion is a negative ion. So as I've mentioned, we are starting a new topic. This is our last topic before we can actually crack on with revising everything for GCSE. So chemical analysis is testing a chemical sample to identify the substances in it. So lesson 1 is today. We're looking at what ions are. Lesson 2 is looking at how to test for positive ions. Lesson 4 is how to test for negative ions. Now I might split that between 2 lessons. And then lesson 4 is looking at instrumental methods used to test chemical samples. So ions form when atoms lose or gain electrons. So an atom is overall neutral. If an atom loses negative electrons, if something that's neutral loses negative charges, it becomes positive. Now, if a neutral atom gains electrons, so it's neutral, it's gaining more negative charge, it becomes negatively charged. Now, an ion is a charged particle. It can be negatively or positively charged, as we know, and that depends on whether it loses or gains electrons. So when atoms lose electrons, they become positive ions called cations. Okay, so cats are nice and furry and cuddly and they make people happy. So I remember them being positive or positive, like pause. Or when you write cat for the T, when you write a T, it looks like a positive charge. So there's lots of ways of remembering that a cation is positive. Now, an anion is a negative ion. So when atoms gain electrons, they become negative, and we call them anions. Now, I remember that anions are negative because it sounds like onions, and onions make people cry. Now, some examples of negative ions. Cl minus, chloride ion. Br minus, Br is bromine. When it becomes an ion, it becomes a bromide ion. Oxygen, oxygen becomes a negative ion. It becomes O minus 2, so it's got a negative charge of 2, and we call that an oxide ion. Now, some other ions you do need to be aware of. Hydroxide ions, OH minus. Again, it's got a negative charge, so it must be an anion. A carbonate ion, CO3 minus 2. And a sulfate ion, SO4 minus 2. Now, what you'll notice is all of these anions are non-metals. So non-metals form negative ions. Now, if we look at the cations, we've got Li+, so lithium ion. We've got Fe+, an iron ion. We've got copper +2, a copper ion. Now, what you'll notice is that all these positive ions are metals. So metal atoms become positive ions. They become cations. Now, there is one exception, and that one exception is hydrogen. Hydrogen is also a positive ion. So task 1, sorting ions. Place the following ions under the correct heading in your table. So on your student worksheet, you need to type out these ions under the correct heading. Are they cations? Are they anions? Okay, pause this lesson video, come back to green pen your work. Okay, so the cations were all the positive ions, all the metals and the hydrogen. The anions were all the negative ions, so your chloride, iodide, hydroxide, your carbonate and your sulfate. So, how do we know what ions are formed? Well, the group number of an atom can tell you what type of ions they form. So any atom in group 1 will lose its one outer shell electron, and they always become positive just by 1. So let's look at an example. We got Li+, Na+, K+, Rb+. So anything in group 1 always becomes positive. And on some periodic tables, hydrogen's included in group 1 because it forms the same ion. Now anything in group 2 forms positive 2 plus 2. So for example, beryllium Be plus 2, Mg magnesium plus 2. Now this big section in the middle has no group number, so we skip straight over to group 3. Group 3 always become positive by 3 because they lose their free outer shell electrons. If they lose 3 electrons, they become positive by 3. So for example, aluminium becomes Al plus 3. Now, let's skip over to group 7. Now, group 7 are all in group 7 because they've got 7 outer shell electrons. They gain 1 electron. If they gain an electron, they become negative by 1. So any atom in group 7 will always form the same ion. F minus, Cl minus, Br minus, I minus, and they become a ide ion, fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodide, and so forth. Now, anything in group 6 becomes negative by 2. So, for example, oxygen becomes an oxide ion with a charge of -2. And finally, anything in group 5 becomes negative by 3. So, for example, nitrogen will become N-3, nitride ion. So just to reinforce the rules of ions, metals and hydrogen always become positive ions, non-metals always form negative ions. The task 2, forming ions. Click the link for the video on your student worksheet and watch it. I don't embed the videos into my lesson because it makes them very poor quality. So go back to your student worksheet, complete task 2, come back once you are done. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. So task 3, work out the ions formed by the atoms. So I've given you a list of atoms. I want you to use your periodic tables in your planners to work out what ions they will form. Now I've included this picture to help you. Okay, pause the lesson video, complete the task on your student worksheet, and then we'll go through the answers. Okay, so the answers are as follows. Okay, green pen, yours. If you didn't get them correct, correct them. If you did, give them a tick. Using the /, change it to a green font. Okay, so task 4, keyword sort. Sort the bullet points by placing them under the correct headings in the table. So you've got cations and anions. You've got a list of bullet points. I need them typed out under the correct heading. Pause this video, come back when you're ready for your answers. So the answers are as follows. Make sure you're green penning your work. Okay, I include the answers for instant feedback so you can see if you've gone wrong somewhere. You can correct where you've gone wrong, or you can see if you understand it and you've got them correct. Well done. Okay, so that brings us on to the consolidation phase of the lesson. I'd like you to write down as many facts as you can remember from today. So I want you to time yourself for 4 minutes, bullet point as many facts as you can remember. So for example, you might say ions are charged particles. You might say cations are positive. So what I'd like you to do is write down as many facts as you can remember, and then once you've done that, you need to complete your RAG rating. And what I've done is I've done a RAG rating for each learning intention, i.e. red, amber or green. Complete that on your student worksheet and then submit your work. Thank you very much for taking the time to access your Google Learning. And I look forward to seeing your completed student worksheets. Thank you, Year 11.